Have you noticed something strange lately? Countries that once depended completely on the US dollar are suddenly building systems that avoid it altogether. Not through loud announcements, not through dramatic speeches, but quietly through digital currencies, gold reserves, and alternative payment networks. And if this trend continues, the world may slowly enter a future where the US dollar is no longer the unquestioned king of global trade. For decades, the US dollar has been the backbone of the global financial system. Oil was traded in dollars. International business happened in dollars. Even countries that disliked America still needed dollars to survive economically. It was almost like the dollar became the world's passport for money. And honestly, the dollar had such dominance that sometimes it felt like even aliens arriving on Earth would probably need USD before opening a bank account. But things started changing after two major events. First came sanctions, then came fear. After Russia faced massive financial restrictions in 2022, many countries suddenly realized something dangerous. If global trade depends too much on one currency, then whoever controls that currency controls the pressure button for the entire world. That realization planted a seed, and today that seed is becoming something much bigger called the BRICS financial transformation. BRICS originally stood for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. But by 2026, this alliance expanded with countries connected to massive energy and commodity power, including the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. Together, these countries now represent over 35% of global GDP. That is no longer a small economic club. That is a parallel financial universe slowly being built in real time. But here's the most important part. Most people think BRICS is trying to launch one single currency tomorrow and destroy the dollar overnight. That is not what is happening. Instead, they are doing something far smarter and far more realistic. They are quietly reducing the need for dollars. The biggest project behind this strategy is something called the BRICS Bridge. This system aims to connect the digital payment systems and central bank digital currencies of BRICS nations. India's UPI, China's CIPS, Russia's SPFS. All these systems are slowly being linked together to allow real-time settlements in local currencies instead of US dollars. That means in the future, countries may trade directly with each other digitally without touching the dollar at all. And this is where things become very serious for global finance. Because reserve currencies survive on dependency. The less the world depends on the dollar, the weaker America's financial influence becomes over time. India is playing a very interesting role here. According to the report, the Reserve Bank of India proposed linking central bank digital currencies for cross-border trade and tourism payments during the 2026 BRICS summit hosted by India. But India is also being careful. Unlike some countries that openly talk about replacing the dollar, India is focusing more on efficiency and flexibility rather than declaring an anti-dollar war. That balancing act matters, because India understands something extremely important. The current system still runs heavily on dollars, and sudden disruption can hurt emerging economies too. So instead of burning the old bridge, India seems to be building a second bridge quietly beside it. Now let's talk about oil, because this is where the real earthquake begins. For decades, global oil trade operated through something called the petrodollar system. Countries bought oil using dollars. Oil exporters stored dollars. And this system kept global demand for the US dollar incredibly strong. But today, cracks are appearing. Russia and China are already settling nearly 90% of their bilateral trade in rubles and yuan as of early 2026. India has also started settling some oil imports in rupees with countries like the UAE. At first glance, these may seem like isolated experiments, but together they form a larger pattern. A pattern where global trade slowly becomes multi-currency instead of dollar-dominated. And if oil trade gradually moves away from dollars, that changes the entire financial gravity of the planet. Now, here's where the story becomes even more fascinating. BRICS countries are not only experimenting with digital payments, they are also buying massive amounts of gold. Collectively, BRICS central banks hold more than 6,000 tons of gold by 2026. This gold acts like a financial shield. Because digital systems are powerful, but trust is everything in finance. And gold has been trusted longer than almost any government in human history. Empires collapsed. Kings disappeared. Stock markets crashed. But somehow gold kept sitting there like that one calm uncle at family weddings who has already seen every possible drama. Another major development is something called BRICS Pay. This blockchain-based system allows traders to settle transactions directly using local digital assets without relying on Western banking systems or SWIFT. That matters because SWIFT has long been one of the most powerful financial tools in the world. If a country loses SWIFT access, global business becomes extremely difficult. BRICS wants alternatives, not because the current system stopped working, but because too much concentration creates vulnerability. And this shift is already creating what analysts call a multinodal financial reality. In simple words, the world is slowly moving from one dominant financial center to multiple competing financial networks. But let's be realistic. This does not mean the dollar collapses tomorrow morning. The US dollar still dominates a massive share of global trade and reserves. America still has enormous financial influence. US markets remain deeply trusted, and many investors still rush toward dollars during crises. So this is not a Hollywood-style overnight collapse story. It is more like a slow erosion, a gradual dilution, a silent rebalancing happening year after year. And those kinds of shifts are actually more powerful because most people notice them too late. The most interesting part of this story is psychological. For years, countries believed there was no practical alternative to the dollar system. Now they are beginning to test alternatives together. And once countries realize alternatives are possible, the monopoly mindset weakens automatically. That is why this story matters not only for governments, but also for investors, businesses, and ordinary people seeking financial independence. Because the future of money is no longer just about paper currency. It is about technology, control, alliances, resources, and digital trust. The world may not wake up one day and suddenly see the dollar dissipate. Instead, people may slowly wake up over the next decade. They may realize the world quietly became financially multipolar while they were busy scrolling social media reels. And by then, the system may already look completely different. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to WealthyKlicks. We bring you powerful stories about global business, money, stock markets, financial shifts, and hidden economic changes every single day. And remember, the biggest financial changes in history usually happen quietly first, before the headlines finally catch up. Thanks for watching.